you a merry Brickmas. We wish you
We continue along Mejlgade, leaving St. Olaf Street behind us. From here, it is only a short way to the next destination. Aarhus Domkirke, or Aarhus Cathedral, officially St. Clement's Church, the main church of the Diocese of Aarhus. The word dom comes from the Latin domus, meaning house. In a church context, it means the house of God. But dom also comes from the Latin dominus, meaning Lord, and dominium, meaning authority or rule. From this we get words like domain and the idea of a legal judgment. In Danish, we still use the same word in this sense, dommer for a judge, and få en dom to receive a verdict. In the Middle Ages, a cathedral was not only the house of God, but also a seat of authority, where the bishop could pass judgment in both religious and secular matters. That is why the idea behind dom still connects churches, power and judgment in our words today. Construction of the present cathedral began in the 1190s, and over the centuries it has undergone many changes. Between 1877 and 1882, it went through a major and rather heavy-handed restoration, intended to return the church to its earlier appearance. At that time, the tall spire was also restored. The church seats around 1,200 people, and at 93 meters in length, it is the longest church building in Denmark. Its tower rises to 96 meters, making it one of the highest towers in the country. In the 1640s, the church appears to have had a very tall tower and two smaller onion-shaped domes, each with some height to them. As you can see in this painting, there was once a masonry structure that connected the cathedral directly to the bishop's complex. The remains of this construction were found as walls and foundations during excavations in the early 1900s. And by the mid-1850s, the tower had been reduced to a very small cap, with the two smaller onion-shaped domes still in place. And here we see people with horse and buggy. Keep in mind, this is several hundred years after the first images we saw of the church, which means that the people who originally built it would have lived under far more primitive conditions than the ones we see here. And here we are inside the church. The cathedral has 3 organs. The main organ was originally built in 1730, but has been rebuilt and expanded several times. With its 89 stops, it is the largest church organ in Denmark. In 2018, the organ was restored in a process that took about 2 years. By comparison, the original construction in 1730-31 took only about a year, and the restoration and expansion in 1928 was also completed within a year. Did you know that the world's oldest known organs, dating back over 2,000 years, were actually water organs? They used flowing water to create steady air pressure for the pipes, long before bellows were invented. Near the entrance is the Marcellus Chapel. Beneath the monument lies a crypt with 19 coffins, all belonging to members of the Marcellus family, a wealthy Dutch-German merchant and landowner family that came to Denmark in the 17th century. The family gained enormous influence, lending money to the Danish crown and being repaid with estates and privileges. I took the long climb to the bell tower, up a narrow spiral staircase. The steps are worn and steep, with inner edges too small to stand on. For a long stretch the light was out, so I had to stop filming and use my flashlight, which at least made it harder to notice the spider webs. I tried to imagine what it must have been like to build this place, working in darkness or by the light of candles. At the top, you step into a space that feels like a forgotten machine hall. And the room is filled with old tools and enormous gears. At the back of the room, in the far right corner, is another staircase that leads up to the bell chamber. And there they are, 3 giant bells, heavy and majestic. These are the ones you can hear all over the city when the clock strikes noon. In addition to the 3 large bells, there are also several smaller ones hanging on the outer side. 2 of the old bells have remarkable histories. One is believed to come from the old St. Olav's Church, which we looked at yesterday. The other dates back to the 13th century. The view from up here is absolutely fantastic. From here, you can stand behind narrow barred windows and look out across the rooftops. Up here, the wind blows a little stronger. And I found this old photo of copper roofing from the summer of 1921. It's incredible to see them casually sitting and standing along the roof ridge like that. When you step outside, it quickly becomes clear that Aarhus Cathedral is not the pure medieval brick church it is often presented as. The walls tell a very different story. Large parts of the facades have been altered, replaced, or rebuilt across many periods, and several earlier additions have vanished entirely. Up close, you can see large granite and tufa blocks embedded in the brickwork. Before the present cathedral was built, a Romanesque granite church stood here, and large parts of it were torn down and built directly into the new structure. For example, 3 old gravestones from that earlier church are now set straight into the masonry. They are nameless stones, reused simply as building material. One of the gravestones carries a serpent with an intricately plated body. The style is reminiscent of Anglo-Scandinavian stone carvings, such as those on the Gosforth Cross in England, where early Christian and Norse visual languages are blended in a single design. I have not found any Danish research that makes this connection. The stone is usually described only in relation to other local Romanesque pieces. This stone comes from the old cathedral school and carries the seal of Martinus Borup, who served as rector in the 17th century. One of the carved objects may look like a broom at first glance, but I believe it is actually a fasces. Another insight into the cathedral's earlier appearance comes from the art historian in Elhøjen, who lived in the 1800s and refers to older accounts, drawings and descriptions of the church before the major restorations. He notes that the ground had risen so much around the cathedral that its foundation was buried and people actually walked down into it like a basement. It is interesting how often we are told that buildings in the past simply became buried under rising soil, debris, and everyday waste. It makes me wonder whether these changes were really just slow layers of ordinary life, or if something more substantial shaped the ground level here over time. This is a geodetic reference plate marking height above sea level. It belonged to the old Danish height system, which was later replaced due to the gradual uplift in the north and subsidence in the south. On the tower you can see a set of symbolic circles, and I found this one especially interesting. The shield with 3 roses is a heraldic emblem used by many noble families in the Middle Ages, but here it marks the personal coat of arms of Bishop Jens Iversen Lange. The rose in heraldry carries several layers of meaning. Long before Christianity, the rosette was a solar and cosmic symbol in the ancient world. Later, the rose became closely associated with the Virgin Mary. In coats of arms, it also marks family identity and lineage, especially among noble houses and royal dynasties. So with that in mind, we return to the building itself. Today, the cathedral stands as an archaeological collage of many layers, built, rebuilt, and patched together with material from structures that no longer exist. How much of Aarhus' earliest history we truly understand, and how much still sits hidden in the walls, remains an open question.